What's up, friends? I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn, coming at you from my apartment in Richmond after VCU fell to Will Wade and NC State 85-79 tonight in Raleigh. I'll first just explain why I'm not in Raleigh tonight. I'd very much planned to be. Was looking forward to this game for a long time. But if any of you saw on Twitter, I had a family emergency today that turned out to be, thankfully, not nearly as much of an emergency as we thought it was. But my mom had a medical scare and we rushed her to the hospital. Turns out that it was a urinary tract infection, which is not nearly as serious as we'd feared it is. But apparently, and I had no idea, UTIs can result in like kind of scary cognitive symptoms, especially in older adults, and that was the case with my mom. So we thought it was something much more serious because she was kind of incoherent and out of it for a while there, but thankfully she's doing well. They got her on antibiotics. She's at Norfolk General right now. And everything's all right, but I was managing that all day today, hence I did not make the trip to the Lenovo Center, which is a shame because I was going to stay with my friend Noah Fleischman, who some of y'all might know is a VCU alum, succeeded me as the sports editor at the Commonwealth Times at VCU, and is now the NC State reporter for the Wolfpacker. But I hope everyone was able to follow along with my friends Michael Phillips and Adam Epstein, who were down there for what was a really exciting, fun game. Also, shout out to everyone who said hey to me at the marathon on Saturday. I love you guys. The support meant the world. There were a few people that yelled, Zach Joachim, go Rams, or it's Zach Joachim from the VCU coverage and On the Horn or whatever. And that meant the world to me while I was running 26.2 miles. I told Phil Martelli I was going to get under 4 hours, and we ran a 4:02. So it's a PR nonetheless, and still happy with it. The marathon keeps you humble and hungry. Let's get to the Rams. You've got a lot to be proud of coming away from this game. I mean, look, Phil Martelli said, I just got done listening to his postgame comments with Robbie and Rodney on the radio broadcast, and nobody wants to hear about a moral victory. I get that. VCU's had so many, almost nearly non-conference games in recent memory where they acquitted themselves valiantly and just couldn't close the deal and get that hang your hat on it non-conference win. That everyone in this fan base and community and program is so hungry to get. So it's frustrating. It is, because VCU had every chance to win this game. I think 5 chances to tie or take the lead in the latter stages of this game. NC State led for, 37-17, I think. But VCU never went away. They wouldn't capitulate, and there's a lot to be proud of in that regard too, because they were resilient on the road against the number 25 ranked team in NC State that might have the best player in the country, because Darian Williams is phenomenal. He had 28 points in this game. Rams did a much better job on him defensively in the second half after he kind of went off in that, he went off in that first half. He was 7 of 10 from the floor. He had 17 points. Finishes with 28, but again, they did a much better job in that second half. Barry Evans was a huge part of that. I thought this was his best game in a VCU uniform by far. We'll get to Barry in a second, but here's Phil's quote that stood out to me. We want to win these games, but at the end of it, we want to test ourselves. There can't be another team in the country that's played 2 top 40 teams. He's talking about NC State and Utah State that weren't bye games so far this season. And what he's talking about is obviously, a lot of the elite programs in the country will schedule, to use the proverbial word, cupcakes that are essentially bye games for those teams. And so there's probably a few, lower tier teams in the country that have played a couple of top 40 teams. But in terms of teams with the aspirations of VCU, NC State and Utah State in your first 4 games of the season are some really big tests. And VCU had every chance to win both of those games. So I'll continue Phil's quote here. I like that. We're finding out a lot about ourselves. I'd rather find out early than sitting there in January in the middle of a tough A10 stretch. That's what this is for. There's no moral victories. I'm as disappointed as anybody, but they, NC State, are going to win a lot of games, and we were right there. And he's absolutely right. I think that's a Wolfpack team that's number 25 in the country and going to be ranked throughout the season here. Darian Williams is phenomenal. Trey Holloman was so clutch down the stretch too. 10 of 10 at the free throw line. Hit some huge free throws in the latter stages of that game to close it out. But Barry Evans, 18 points, man. He was phenomenal. 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Phil talked about they kind of got him out on the perimeter defensively a little bit more. And that's something that they noticed at Bryant, is that when he's more engaged and kind of playing that head of the snake role defensively a little bit, it just gets him into the feel of the game. And you could certainly see how that affected him today, because I thought that he carried over the momentum from that second half against St. Peter's ever since the block charge call right, against St. Peter's. Barry Evans has been really good. Maybe that ignited a little something of him. Jadrian Tracy, 16 points, 4 rebounds, team high 7 assists. I think he's been a great distributor this year. I think he leads VCU. I don't know what the exact number is, but I believe he leads VCU in assists on the season. And Lazar Djokovic, again, was phenomenal for this team. He gave NC State a lot of trouble. They didn't have anyone who could match up with his physicality down low. And given recent years how VCU has struggled against bigs like that, how nice is it for the Rams to have that physically imposing center, that the other team doesn't have the guy to match up with. Djokovic is 6'11", 235, and he's all of 6'11", 235. He had 13 points, 5 rebounds. I think the broadcast called him the Serbian sensation at one point tonight, so that was fun. I know we've been workshopping the Godzilla nickname. But Djokovic really good again. Terrence Hill, 9 points, 3 of 7 from the floor, and 3 of 7 from 3. That was all of his field goal attempts from beyond the arc. Hit 3 of them in the first half and then couldn't sink one in the second half. So I think NC State certainly talked about closing out to him at halftime. They did a much better job on Terrence defensively. Tyrell Ward, 9 points, 5 rebounds. And VCU early on in the game, after NC State started really hot from beyond the arc, I think they were 6 of 8 from 3 in the early goings and finished that first half 6 of 14 from 3. So VCU clamped down defensively a little bit after NC State, really flexed their offensive muscles as one of the best scoring teams in the country early on. VCU stayed in the game on the offensive glass, right? 11 offensive rebounds, 8 second chance points in that first half. They were getting extra possessions, and that's how they were hanging around. And a Barry Evans, for all NC State, it felt like, at points that they had a comfortable lead, and then Barry Evans hits a reverse finish on a baseline drive to end that first half, and it's a 4-point game. And you're looking up the scoreboard and you're saying, wow, VCU is in this, feeling like they really haven't played well. Let me see if I can find those numbers, because I had them somewhere in my story here. VCU did not shoot it well in the first half at all. Yeah, they were 11 of 36, 30.6% from the field, 6 of 24 from 3. NC State, 14 of 29, that's 48.3% from the field, and 6 of 14 from three-point range, that's 42.9%. NC State shot the ball so much better, and yet this was a 4-point game. VCU ended up with 14 second chance points on 12 offensive boards, so NC State cleaned that up in the second half, but still wonderful activity on the glass for VCU, and that was a big part of them staying in this game, and man, they just never went away. 10-2 run right before the under-16 stoppage in the second half, right? Made it 50-49. Brandon Jennings coast-to-coast finish off glass. Evans rebound and put back. Djokovic slam at the rim off of a Tracy bounce pass. And then Nick Lewis catch and shoot 3 in the left corner. And all of a sudden it was 50-49, and the Lenovo Center was kind of in shock as the NC State fans, I think you could feel, were kind of realizing like, oh crap, like this team's picked to finish the top of the A10. They're legit. Even though we're in the ACC, they came to play tonight and they're going to give us a fight. And VCU absolutely did that. Holloman hit some huge shots down the stretch. Like I said, he was so clutch. And VCU, Robbie and Rodney talked about this. Like I said, I think I'm quoting Robbie on this, but he said 5 chances to either tie or take the lead. And they got good looks on them too. The shot selection was pretty good in the second half. They just couldn't hit, that go-ahead shot. One that stood out to me was the Tracy, what would be and one. He was fouled on a finish in the post with 9:20 to play. That made it 65 up, but then he couldn't hit the free throw at the line to put VCU ahead, and they never led after that. It was 1-0 early on, I think, but we did have a couple ties there in the latter stages. It's 76-73 with 3:48 to play after Barry hits a couple of free throws. Tracy catch and shoot 3 in the left corner with 1:50 to play, 78-76. Lenovo Center's on pins and needles at that point, but then Holloman, I think he hit 6 free throws in those last couple of minutes and was really clutch at the line. VCU took its last time out, to a good learning experience for Nick Lewis, who struggled and got trapped a couple of times after he came across the halfway line. And I also think the book is out on zoning VCU. A team that wants to play as fast as Phil Martelli's does. NC State went to a 1-3-1 for points of that second half, and that gave VCU trouble. So that's something they'll need to work on, breaking down zones. I think they'll see more of them as the season goes on here. And yeah, VCU falls to 19-13 against former head coaches since 2008. I included that in the story because that was a great stat that the broadcast threw out there, that VCU was 19-12 against former head coaches entering this game. But Will Wade gets the better of his former program. And if you haven't had a chance to read the story, say what you will, feel what you will about Will Wade. It's obviously a complex relationship that he has with VCU basketball. He's a complex figure in college basketball. He said some really glowing stuff about the VCU program in his interview with Adam Epstein from ACC Media Day, and I wrote about that as the advance for this game. I think showed a lot of maturity and reflection in saying, I should have stayed for longer. I didn't realize how good I had it at VCU, and that the program makes the coaches more than the coaches make the program. I think he said that's something that people get twisted about VCU, that the infrastructure there is just so set up for success, and he never imagined going to an SEC school at LSU that he wouldn't have some of the same things that he did at VCU in terms of infrastructure, and that was the case. So he had some really glowing praise of VCU, and I'm not going to tell fans what to do, but I think that when this NC State team comes to the Siegel Center next year, there'll certainly be some boos. I think there'll be plenty of applause and cheering in there for Will Wade as well. Also, I think everyone agrees, too, on just the fact that he would schedule a home-and-home with VCU, a tip of the cap, because not many former coaches will do that. So VCU falls to NC State 85-79. I'm sorry I wasn't in Raleigh, guys. I'll obviously be at the Siegel Center on Saturday for Coppin State. Another stat to throw out there, VCU forced 17 turnovers and only had 12 themselves, so they were a little better tonight in terms of the ball protection. Phil said that he told his team after this game, this is another one of those collective experiences that they're going to be able to draw on and use to their advantage later in the season to try and pull out and win tough games. So NC State 85, VCU 79, Rams to 2-2. They returned to action on Saturday against Coppin State at the Siegel Center. Love y'all. Thanks again so much for the marathon support and all the kind words on Twitter today, given the medical emergency that kept me from going to Raleigh. I appreciate y'all immensely and love you, and thanks for following along the coverage. I got a story online now, and we'll attach On the Horn to it shortly here after I get it posted. I'll see y'all on Saturday. Thank you.